Greetings everyone, and welcome back to the Noctilucant channel. About 2 years ago I put out a video called It's Neo-Folk Season, Let's Have a Listen. And it was a video where I just talked about, actually 2 videos, where I talked about like 5 or 6 different neo-folk albums that I really like. And kind of recently if you followed this channel the past few months, you've probably noticed that I've talked about a lot more of the music that kind of falls underneath that post-industrial umbrella. You know, death industrial and power electronics has been covered here a lot more, and just noise music in general. It's stuff I've always had an interest in, and it all falls underneath there. And certainly all the neo-folk music falls underneath that umbrella too. And I think that's, even though musically it's quite different, all of those guys, like the Kurt 93, Death in June, Soul Invictus, and all those old projects, a lot of those guys started out in the industrial scene, so it just sort of got grouped together, even though musically it's a completely different thing. But interestingly, a lot of those bands had like industrial characteristics or noise characteristics sort of intermingled into like their acoustic composition. So it was always sort of there, but it was, more subtle and pushed in the back. And anyway, I wanted to talk about that music more and just kind of continuing this channel in that direction where I'm talking about more of that kind of stuff. And I got a lot of motivation to do that after recently reading and finishing the Spectrum Compendium. Spectrum Compendium, or Spectrum Zine as it was a zine from Australia that ran from 1998 to 2002. It was done by this guy named Richard Stevenson, and he put up 5 issues during that period, and eventually it compiled here is the 6th issue, which was never actually put out because he got so burned out on it, it got, never put out. But this is an incredible book that just really covers everything that would, really fall underneath that umbrella. You got everything from dark ambient, drone music, power electronics, death industrial, noise, martial industrial, and neo-folk music, of course, was all covered actively in the zine. And it just felt like that was the sort of push I needed to really, get motivated with this channel again and just start putting videos out again. So we'll see what happens, but at least for this video, we're going to talk about neo-folk music. And I'm not going to go into a great big history of neo-folk music. If you want that, watch the first video. I'll link it up here, or link it in the comments. You can go check it out and see what I have to say back there. Or just, do some Google searches and, do your own research and figure it out for yourself. Anyway, let's talk about some music. Up first, and already playing in the stereo, is Nature and Organization's Beauty Reaps the Blood of Solitude, originally released in 1994 on David Tibet's Dertro record label. So, Nature and Organization is a project that has its origins in the mid-'80s. It's, for all intents and purposes, the solo project of Michael Cashmore, who was in Kurt 93 for about 15 years and was more or less their main songwriter. And although this project is more or less just Kurt 93 under a different name, it's still, kind of considered Michael's solo project, I guess. And the reason why it's more or less just Kurt 93 under a different name is because David Tibet from Kurt 93 does the lead vocals on several tracks, as well as Rose McDowell, Douglas Pierce from Death in June, and some of the other musicians on here have also collaborated with Kurt 93 and a bunch of other musicians that are involved in the neo-folk scene. So as I understand it, Nature and Organization put out a release in 1986 that was harsh noise, power electronics. I've never personally heard it or owned it, but I guess that's what it was. And then you flash forward a couple of years after Michael's in Kurt 93, this came out in 1994. And this is, for what it's worth, absolutely one of the best neo-folk albums ever conceived. Every song is utterly beautiful and just so just meticulously crafted. It also, as I said, features, lead vocals from David Tibet, and, David's voice is always sort of a conflicting thing. Some people, dig it, some people completely hate it, and it ruins everything for it. I feel like on this record, David delivers some of his best vocals, and, his vocal style is anything but traditional. He has a very unique voice, a very unique style, but he sounds really good on here. Rose McDowell, who of course has collaborated with Coil, Death in June, Kurt 93, and several other bands throughout the 80s and 90s. She makes appearances here and she sounds phenomenal. Douglas Pierce from Death in June, he does vocals on a few songs, and just everything about this album is just lush and just really beautiful and melancholy and just has that sort of autumn vibe to it. I always really get into neo-folk music around this time of the year. It just fits so perfectly, or, whenever a more sort of depressive or melancholy mood comes up, it's my go-to genre, I guess you could say. Yeah. So this record is interesting too, because it sort of features, what's been come to be accepted as, traditional neo-folk music. There's also some neoclassical pieces. There's also even a harsh industrial piece in here, which is really interesting. But I love everything about this album. It's this is original pressing here too, which I guess goes for quite a bit now. Got some lyrics in here. David Tibet is once again writing the lyrics here, so. But, just beautiful, beautiful stuff. If you've ever enjoyed any neo-folk music, this is essential. I believe about 8 years ago it finally got re-released with the second Nature and Organization album, which was called Death in a Snow Leopard, something like that. But on the second album, which was from 1998, Michael Cashmore took the music in a purely neoclassical style, and I never owned it. It's very hard to get that original pressing, but again, it was re-released, so I should probably get on it. But I remember downloading it from Napster or something in the early 2000s. I remember it was just utterly heartbreaking neoclassical music, and I it's one of those things you listen to when your cat dies or something like that. It was just really sad sounding, so I never bought it. But yeah, but anyway, this is a total masterpiece. There's so many good songs in here. I'd say one of the best, for sure, is the Wicker Man song, which is a cover of the song from the old Wicker Man film from 1971. A beautiful cover of it. Blood Steam Runs is, again, one that has David Tibet singing lead vocals, but it's great. It's one of the best current 93 songs ever. My Black Diary is very much, it has Douglas Pierce from Death in June singing, and it sounds like a Death in June song. But probably my favorite song is Tears for an Eastern Girl. It's just really melancholy, really beautiful. It has both David and Rose singing on it. It's great, man. But fantastic album. If you've never heard it, definitely look it up. Nature and Organization. Continuing on, I wanted to talk about an album called Woodsmoke from a Finnish band known as Nest. Now, there seems to be several bands out there named Nest, so not to be confused with other ones. But Nest, as I said, was a Finnish band, and I came across this band back in the early 2000s, and I think, if I remember correctly, this was a blind purchase, which I probably bought from a distributor or record label like Metal Pillar or something like that. I really can't remember, it's been so long, but this album is not by any means in a style that's comparable to traditional neo-folk as, some people know it. It sounds nothing like Kurt 93 or Death in June. No, this is a very unique album that uses the Finnish instrument, the kantele, if I'm saying it correctly, as the main instrument. The kantele is sort of like a lap harp. It's a traditional instrument, and it has either steel strings or horsehair as the strings. And it's sort of, sounds like a typical harp, but it's, very much a Finnish thing, and I guess it's very much a part of, traditional Finnish culture and all that kind of stuff, and... yeah, but it's a very lovely sound, very beautiful. And although this album is very minimal, it has a very powerfully, nature, and you can sort of feel the Finnish nature, and I've been there, so I guess maybe I can feel a little bit better than some other people, but just a really beautiful album. But very minimal and dark. It has this sort of the kantele, some backing synths, some bass guitar, and then just some sort of mumbly vocals here and there. They're not really discernible what he's saying, so that's why I say mumbly, but it works. It'll make sense when you listen to it. But just a really beautiful album that, again, was a blind purchase, and just phenomenal stuff here, man. One of the things I really like about all of the Nest albums, too, is that its main creator, whose name is Aslak Tilanen, if I'm saying it right, I think. But, really beautiful artwork. It's kind of, I don't know what it is, it's charcoal, a pencil or something like that, but really, really great drawings and just really great artwork. I love it, man. So, really great stuff. Really different and, not by any means, traditional dark ambient. But, I love it, man. This band is probably most well-known for what's well-known in the metal community because they did a split recording with Egelach back in 2004, 2005. A split picture disc, which I have and love quite a bit, but I think that's kind of when this band became more known to the masses. This one, I think, originally when it came out in 2003 on Corvus Records, kind of flew under the radar, which is a shame because it's really good. A few years after this album, I believe in 2007, they put out a second album called Trail the Unwary, which featured some more kind of metal-ish kind of characteristics. There was some guitars and stuff like that, and but it was still Very unique stuff. And then for whatever reason, after that, Ness just kind of disappeared. There's been like one album, and I don't know that it's officially an album because it seems like it's more of like a live improvisation sort of thing, but yeah, I don't know why he hasn't put out any more music since then, because it's just phenomenal stuff. So yeah, if you've never heard Nest, I want to hear something really unique in the neo-folk genre, this is definitely one to look up. Continuing on, we're going to talk about an artist I originally came across back in 2020, and it was totally random, just something I discovered on Spotify, and it was just absolute love. Like, I can't even put into words how much this artist just sort of spoke to me at that moment, and just really, it just was everything I needed at that particular time. I mean, I started going through a depressive spell, and it was just perfect. So the artist in question here is Prag 83 and their 2018 album, Fragments of Silence. Prag 83 is basically the solo project of a man known only as Hair K, and which is kind of a weird artist name and a weird band name too. So thematically, all of the music is centered around the writings of Franz Kafka, who was born in Prague and who was born in 1883. So that's my best guess as to what the name means. And then the artist's chosen name, Herr K. Herr is like basically like Mr. in like German, basically. It's a German project. And K is a reference to, I'm assuming, the Franz Kafka character, Joseph K. So, a very mysterious individual. He has also another neo-folk-ish project called Fields of Mildew, and sort of more of a gothic post-punk band whose name I can't remember offhand. I didn't like that as much, but Prog 83 and Fields of Mildew are absolutely phenomenal. But this is sort of traditional neo-folk, but again, not exactly in like the current 93 vein or something like that. It's definitely put through a modern filter, and there's sort of this like progressive kind of touch to this. I feel like, and this might alienate people me seeing this, but I feel like it kind of reminds me of some of the like the Opeth is kind of acoustic competition, like some of Opeth's acoustic compositions they've put out over the past 20 some years or whatever. It kind of reminds me of that. So it has a sort of neo-folk, but sort of this underlining rock and progressive kind of touch to it, and it's utterly beautiful. The guitars are so well done, the vocals are phenomenal, and just, I mean, if you're in the right mood, and I guess being in sort of a depressive mood or having it be in autumn is just perfect. It's a short album. It's only about 35, maybe 40 minutes, but just every second is just wonderful and just so gripping and just beautiful. I mean, I absolutely love this album, and I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've listened to it or how I just don't get bored of it. Sometimes you listen to an album so much, I'm obsessed over it, and eventually you're like, oh, maybe it wasn't as good. No, I love this album. It is so good. So anyway, there's the front cover, there's the back cover. Very heavily centered around Franz Kafka and his writings, and I had been aware of Franz Kafka for many years. I just never read any of his stories before this, and then I got a book with all of his stories, and I was just, I'd sit here listening to this music while reading the stories, and just, it matched up so well. It was just so good. But everything this band has put out is just phenomenal, and for just a solo project, it's amazing. That's all I can say. So this is his second album back in 2018, and he has since then put out a sort of a compilation which gathers together a bunch of EPs, which is just great too, and really eagerly awaiting his next masterpiece, so hopefully soon. Anyway, Prog 83. Alright, continuing on, we're going to talk about another one of my all-time favorites, an album I've had for well over 20 years. It is Empyrium's Where at Night the Wood Grouse Plays, originally released in 1999. Empyrium began in 1994 as sort of a folk-influenced doom metal, blackish metal band. I think the black metal characteristics are really only present in the demo and the first album, and then by the time you get to the second album, they're moving into more of a folk and doom metal style. And what makes Empyrium just a really important band in the grand scheme of things is that they're one of the first bands to really, or at least one of the first bands in the heavy metal underground to really embrace nature and really make it like a central part of the lyrics and just the themes. And I know what you're going to say, like a lot of black metal bands did that too, but Obviously, black metal bands had a lot of other themes, like, Satan and anti-Christianity, whereas Empyrium, the nature was the central theme. So I always view them as being, like, pretty much the first as far as I know it. Well, anyway, back in 1999, they switched gears and went for a purely acoustic sound, and, well, that is the result of this album, and it is absolutely breathtaking. I mean, it's very simplistic. It's basically just two guitars playing just gorgeous autumnal like sort of melodies, and there's no doubt about it that this album is influenced by Ulver's Kveldsanger album, which came out in 1996 originally. It's influenced by that, but it doesn't quite tap into like the more like sort of acoustic neoclassical sounds that the Ulver album had. No, it wouldn't be until the band's fourth album, Valen, where Empyrium would adapt a lot more of that neoclassical and folk sounds. I mean, both albums are just phenomenal in my opinion, but this one, I sort of like the more stripped down approach to it. It's just really beautiful, quiet, and just almost entirely instrumental songs, except for the last two songs, only two songs that have vocals on them. Otherwise, entirely instrumental and just really beautiful music. It's a really relaxing album. It's an album that you can just sort of, chill out and just really lose yourself in it. It's an album that I've personally listened to while, walking around a park in the autumn by myself and stuff like that. It's really beautiful stuff. I love just about every song here, but somehow the fifth song, Vemut, is just sort of my favorite. It's a very simple song. It's a less than 2 minute song. Just really beautiful, really quick, and it's actually a song I used to walk down the aisle when I got married a couple of years ago. So, a very important song. I don't really know why I chose it. It somehow fit, I guess. I mean, me and my wife got married on Halloween, so it just, it was short and quick, and it was instrumental, and it's a song I'd always liked, so I just picked it, I mean, I don't know. But it is an album that means a lot to me, either way. So yeah, there's look at the back cover, and I mean, again, Empyrium, very, central, lots of themes of nature, and yeah, I mean, beautiful, beautiful stuff, lots of photography in here. Lovely, lovely stuff. I mean, if you've never heard this album, it's just a mandatory purchase of mine, And again, this one, very similar to that Ulver album. This one has very little to do with, the more traditional, again, Kurt 93 sounds or whatever. Much more elaborate, and just much more, traditionally folk sounding maybe? I don't know. But anyway, a beautiful album, Empyrium, Where at Night the Wood Grouse Plays. Alright, one more for this neo-folk video, and I wanted to talk about Fire and Ice, or Fire Plus Ice, as I guess they are technically called. Their 2000 album, Bird King. I came across Fire and Ice pretty early in my meanderings into the neo-folk genre, and this is just absolutely one of the best neo-folk albums ever conceived. Again, we're kind of talking about a band here, kind of, is more in that sort of traditional sound, comparable to Kurt 93, Death in June, and Fire and Ice is a very heavily pagan-themed project, which is more or less centered around one individual whose name is Ian Reid, and on each release he's basically assisted by several guest musicians. In fact, as far as I know, all Ian Reid does is the vocals and, writes the lyrics, and all the other music is wrote by the guest musicians. So, yeah, it's pretty closely related to Kurt 93, whereas, Kurt 93 is centered around David Tibet working with various session musicians. That's how Fire and Ice operates. So, yeah, that's on this particular album, there's, you have, Michael Kashmar, again, from Nature and Organization, and Kurt 93, Douglas Pierce from Death in June, Richard Leviathan from Ostara, Michael Moynihan from Blood Access, Joseph Budenholzer from Backworld, and several other guest musicians to fill out various different roles to this album. But what I love about this album is just it's absolutely beautiful guitar work by mostly Michael Kashmar. He does most of the guitar work here, and it's phenomenal. Very melancholy too, and very elusive, but I guess pagan themed lyrics. I don't really know what a lot of the lyrics are about, if I'm totally honest with you, but the music is so well done. It's just so dark and beautiful sounding, and it's just always been an album that's been very close to my heart, and just one I've constantly come back to over the years. Ian Ian Reid's vocals are certainly interesting, and much like a lot of other neo-folk singers, it's far from perfect, but it works with the music, I think. Like, that's the thing about a lot of these neo-folk bands, is I think, like, the music is so good that just, like, you kind of accept the vocals over time. I mean, maybe not everyone accepts the vocals of Tony Wakeford and Soul Invictus, but I guess you get what I'm saying. If you're a neo-folk man, you get it. If you don't, well, maybe you'll get it later on. I don't know. But Ian Reid isn't terrible. He doesn't have a great deal of range, and he's not a brilliant singer, but I think it works well. He has, nowadays, I believe he's like in his 70s, but like, he was kind of one of the older guys that was sort of hanging out with like David Tibet and all those guys back in the 80s, and he was known as like this pagan magician and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, I don't really know his whole history, but he sang on, or had an appearance on one of the 80s Kurt 93 albums, and then eventually started Fire and Ice around like 90 or 91. He published his first album in 1992. It was called Gilded by the Sun, and I mean, all of the Fire and Ice albums are very, very good, but, you know, again, there's a lot of, you know, it's up to personal taste, really. I mean, if you like beautiful music and beautiful guitars, you'll like this, and you can get over the fact that the vocals ain't perfect, and the fact that the lyrics are very elusive and just not easy to understand. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely love the music here, and have done so for many years now. So yeah, and I mean, it was because of albums like this too, it made me more interested in like, you know, studying paganism and just, you know, exploring runes and stuff like that, and just, yeah, I mean, neo-folk music was really instrumental in me just exploring a lot of interesting paths, and just, you know, stepping out of the box and thinking differently from what I had thought previously. You know, so it was the same thing with like black metal music. You know, when I got into black metal music, it made me really challenge a lot of the thoughts and the way I thought before that. You know, I don't know if it's good always to have, for music to have that much of an influence on you, but I feel like in the grand scheme of things, it really did have a great influence on me and how I've turned out over the years. And yeah, it's, you know, helped to shape some of my beliefs and stuff like that through all the music I've gotten into. So anyway, Bird King by Fire and Ice, just a phenomenal album. I mean, I love basically every song on this album. Dragons in the Sunset is the opening track, a little more upbeat, but then song like Bird King or The Werewolves of London Town, just a lot more melancholy. Gaze of the Proud is another, you know, it's melancholy, but again, elusive lyrics. Or the Lady of the Veneer, I believe it's like a traditional song. It features a female vocalist, and it's really good. Yeah, I mean, just a phenomenal album. And if you've never heard Fire and Ice, well, again, just another fantastic neo-folk album, well worth checking out. Well, that'll about do it for this neo-folk themed video, and I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you, my regulars here, don't mind me stepping out of the dark ambient box or whatever a little bit more. You know, this channel and, you know, my Noctilucant Instagram has sort of become my source for, you know, talk about music that doesn't fit into like the black metal or heavy metal genres, and I have a lot of fun with that. You know, it's just, I'm very passionate about music, as you've probably come to realize about me over the years of watching this channel, and there's a lot of music I want to talk about here, so, you know, I'm going to always keep it under that post-industrial umbrella, but you never know where I might meander. There might be some other surprises here to come, whether you like it or not, I don't know. I hope you do, but I've always got interesting music to talk about, and I hope you found this video to be interesting, and of course, if you are a neo-folk band, or if you are a neo-folk fan, sorry, I hope you hope if you know these albums. If you don't, check them out, or if you have recommendations for me to check out, definitely, you know, put those in the comments. I'd love to hear them, and other than that, you know, that's about it. So I hope you enjoyed this. All right, bye.